So for my giftedness story, I would like to share a little bit about when I was much younger, probably around the age of 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. I would play school with my younger brother. So I have a younger brother named Austin, and he is about 2 years younger than me. And somehow, growing up, he agreed to let me be his teacher and to play school with him. So I have a picture of him and I right there. This is when we're quite a bit older than when we used to play school together. But either way, we were young. He was probably in kindergarten, even below kindergarten, when I started teaching him. And what I would do is I remember just being back in our back bedroom, and we had a little metal school desk that I would set up and have him use, and I would rearrange the room to make sure it was conducive to my teaching. And then I would also prepare my lessons. I remember being really young and preparing a worksheet for him to write on, or preparing a math lesson for him to do. And I remember just having things just so I could be ready to teach him. One of the things that I remember teaching him was how to read, even before he was in school. I remember just feeling the responsibility that I needed to make sure he knew what I knew in terms of reading and writing. And so I used a small reading primer that I got, I think, from my grandma. It's from the early 1900s, and I still have it. It's called Everyday Fun with Jack and Jill. And I remember sitting with my brother and having him read out of these pages. And I remember the day when I found out that he wasn't really reading. He had just memorized what I told him were the words. And I remember just going to my mom and being so upset that I thought he could read, and yet he had only memorized. And so not knowing that memorization was actually part of the process. But either way, we had a lot of fun together. I think I probably had a lot more fun than Austin did. But I remember just loving speaking to him and sharing the information that I had learned in my school, and sharing the information with him. And so I have a lot of different small memories all related to that, but that's kind of just an overarching memory of really preparing and teaching and speaking and helping Austin as a little teacher. And so obviously a lot of different abilities come with that. I wrote down planning, speaking, teaching, a lot of explaining, writing, reading, conversing, coming alongside, thinking, creating assignments, giving assignments, standing, walking, talking, encouraging. I remember just, walking around him and giving him grades on his paper and telling him good job, and writing little notes like, way to go, you can do it. Just ordering the classroom and ordering my lessons. I loved doing things like that, even at a very, very young age. And so definitely worked with Austin, was my main student at that age. And then worked with information, books, papers. Circumstances was home. We were at home doing that, and with my family. And of course, the role was I was a sister, but in my mind, I was also a teacher and a helper, and hopefully he felt some of that. And then I think what was most satisfying to me was just helping him learn. I loved when he was learning something, or I felt he was learning something, and I loved accomplishing those assignments, those tasks. I remember being so adamant that he finished the last problem on his math page, because I think I felt at that age more accomplished that he accomplished that task than he did. So I loved just moving forward in that realm with him, and speaking and sharing information with him. Quite a few of the abilities and circumstances in that little story come up throughout all my stories. So just to real quick summarize some information from my stories. The different abilities that were common to my stories were thinking, planning, speaking, teaching, writing, ordering, whether that's spaces or information, creating, whether that's usually dealing with words or creating atmospheres and spaces, explaining, learning, coordinating, conversing, collaborating, discipling, disciplining, or using discipline, being disciplined, attention to detail, matching, reading, and expressing. The subject matter that kept arising in my stories were the Bible, words or the English language, truth, information, students or someone that I was trying to help, or teammates. Circumstances that kept appearing in all these stories were classrooms or classroom type settings like workshops or being up front at churches or just up front in front of crowds. Also, different circumstances that kept coming up were decorating spaces, just the opportunity to decorate a space or to take a space that was ugly or empty or just not very functional or needed improvement, and making improvement on those spaces using colors and shapes and patterns and textures, and just in my mind creating beauty and creating an atmosphere, expressing feelings through spaces. And other circumstances that kept coming up was just being and working as part of a team, whether that was a team of teachers or a team of volunteers or a team within a job setting. I was constantly, for the most part, working with a team of people and loved leading within that team. Also, another circumstance that kept coming up was working alone. So definitely working with a team and enjoying that, but a lot of my stories involved some type of prep work, lesson planning, reading, learning, researching, thinking, those sort of things, and oftentimes that allowed me, forced me to be alone a lot and do that first before I presented. The two rules that kept commonly coming up within my stories was being a teammate or a team player in whatever task was being accomplished, and then also being a teacher speaker type of figure. And then lastly, what I found most satisfying common thread throughout all my stories, one of them was just the satisfaction of accomplishing goals. I think that came up in maybe every story, whether it was a goal set before me by someone else or a goal that I envisioned myself and wanted to accomplish, which most of the time it was probably the latter. I thrive off of accomplishing goals, and whether it's small goals on a daily basis or larger goals, finally getting to that final accomplishment, I really am satisfied when I can meet a goal. Learning was another big point of satisfaction that kept coming up in the stories. Almost every story had an aspect of learning, and I just love the process of learning. I love the journey. I love meeting the goal, but really I just love all the tiny goals that really are the journey in the process. And so I love learning in so many different capacities, but mostly in my stories that looked like writing, reading, learning information. I've also noticed just the thread of being up front and speaking. That was really evident throughout my stories. Most of them had some aspect of that, and I just derive a lot of satisfaction from not necessarily attention. I'm an introvert, and so I don't really like attention per se, but if I feel like I have something to say and something that God has given me to say, or just an assignment that someone has given me, and part of that is speaking and conversing up front, I really thrive off of that. It really excites me and motivates me, and is just a lot of fun for me. Also, another thread of satisfaction was just making a spiritual impact. A lot of my stories had something to do with me teaching a Bible workshop, or teaching some sort of Bible or truth in front of people at churches, telling stories that would spiritually impact people. And so having a spiritual impact on people is really really satisfying for me. And then lastly, just being a part of a team. That was another point of satisfaction that kept coming up in my stories. That as much as I enjoy working alone, and I think that's part of the process of being a speaker and teacher, at the end of the day, I think coming together and collaborating and coordinating and working to accomplish a goal as a team is extremely satisfying for me, and a lot of fun. So those were my giftedness stories, and those were my summaries, and I enjoyed this project a lot. So thank you for the opportunity.